in order to enhance the initiative to fight crime, the SAPS has initiated the Eyes and Ears program, where the police and private security industry sit together in all provincial command centers as part of this partnership. The different month stakeholder meetings are held to discuss on how to deal with this cash. So we have a number of stakeholders that we've partnered with. Also, business against crime playing a leading role there and working with the police and the intelligence structure. So this thing is under control. We are working on it, and that is why you hear a lot of noise about it throughout the country. But the police are on the ground in each and every hotspot province in such a way that people are being arrested. They are on their run, in fact.
Commissioner Sibiya, I understand that clearly there's this plan that has been put together, but what people want to see is action. And I don't think that we can say that it is under control as long as there's still members of the community who feel that they have to pay these monies in order to preserve their businesses and in order to preserve their properties, then it's not under control.
No, it is under control, Cathy. When I tell you about all the actions the South African police service have put in place, to understand that even our minister is in the process of engaging the Minister of Justice, including the NPA, to understand that between the police and the National Prosecuting Authority, we've got a uniformed approach on how to work together in dealing with the scourge, in order to make sure that there is a clear understanding and a working relation on how to deal with these type of cases, so that even when we arrest and then how long it takes to process and to end up actually finding someone guilty, it is something that is being expedited as well. So we are well on our way in making sure that we expedite that type of process.
Marcus, let me bring you in. You're calling from Mpumalanga. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to our Deputy National Commissioner, Mr. Sibiya. How are you, and to the listeners of SAFM? Cathy, let me say a few things, and that the Commissioner is not in a position to say. I will say number one. The challenge, Cathy, is our system in the country. I'll say why. Number one, the Commissioner knows we do have good officials, but they've been frustrated by what we call our Criminal Procedure Act. Mind you, Cathy, criminals are very clever. They started this thing, but they've already planned. They know the loophole that we have as a country, because our Criminal Justice Procedure Act, it gives criminals a leeway to do as they please. Number two, there are no proper effective border controls in South Africa. Number three, Cathy, they know this government, they have changed police from force to police services. Police powers have been stripped away by the very same government. Criminals are treated well in prison, Cathy. They know that there's no threat. They know that's why they're doing this, because they know that even in prison is hotels in South Africa. Hence, that is why the criminal, the crime intelligence is not effective as well. Hence, that is why community members are paying these criminals, because they know tomorrow they will be out of the street tormenting them again. And hence I'm saying that now, why the partnership with private security? Because private security, when they respond with force. And such they're afraid that they will be taken to court and this government will not protect them. So even themselves, they are frustrated until, Cathy, we change our Criminal Procedure Act, we re-empower our South African police services and change it to be a South African force, then criminals would know their place. And we change also our prisons. They know that it's not a place where they can go and eat a nice meal.
Okay.
That's what I want to say.
Commissioner, is he right?
Look, I wouldn't say it's right or wrong, but what I can say, what I'm aware of, you can see the government's effort at the borders in terms of the border management control that has been actually put in place there. You can see the relationship that has been fostered with the National Prosecuting Authority in attention to the crime, including the organized crime system that has been put in place, where the NPA and the South African Police Service are working together in making sure that they are fighting organized crime. Now, when you talk about the issues of the South African Police Service being changed to service or I don't think it is for this platform that we should actually get to that point, including the porous borders. This is being attended to at the government level. But all we know is that we have deployed adequately, including at the border gate. We have intelligence that is operating there. We have got enough boots on the ground at the border gate that are addressing what is going on at the border gate. Yes, we do have a lot of foreigners that are here in the country, but at the same time, I don't think at this point in time it is relevant for this discussion.
Takatayo, you're in Cape Town. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to Mr. Libya. Cathy, when Mr. Libya was sharing his views with you, I remember he said to you, we, the communities, we are the one who are causing this thing to spread because we are obeying what they tell us. For instance, if they say we must pay certain amount of money, they are going to protect us, we must refuse to pay that. I took that point as a concern. Cathy, if you remember, when the people are being robbed of their valuables, when they're driving on these hotspot areas, on the four-way stops, the police, I remember, they advised us that we mustn't resist. Our life is better than every valuable that we are having. So now, Mr. Libya, he said, we must not give them. I mean, can you imagine if someone is going to tell me straight that you must give me 10,000. If you don't give that 10,000, I'm going to kill you. Which one I'm going to prefer? I would prefer to give that 10,000. But another thing that I want to tell Mr. Libya, now that this thing now is spread and you are aware of it, Cathy already mentioned the provinces that are having a lot of this extortion. I think you, as the commissioners and the generals, you must just go to maybe Mr. President and try to just enforce. There must be more strength of police in our communities because you see there is no crime that is smaller than the other crime because there's a lot of crimes that we reported to our community services, but you find that some of the crimes, they are treated them as normal crimes, which they are not. Now you know about it, please make sure that there are boots on our streets so that the people can know who to report now without even having a fear.
Okay, Takatayo, thanks for that call. He's out in Cape Town. I'm going to bring you some of the other issues being raised by our listeners on the WhatsApp line.
Good day, Sis Cathy, SP Shubedi Paul Modise here in Rocklands, Bloemfontein. I'm listening to that gentleman you invited there, or is he calling in? I were not listening when you start, but he is defending the police on no grounds because he said he wants the evidence. Let me give him the evidence now. There is somebody now during the week or over the weekend who was shot 6 to 12, 15 times, was assassinated, killed in action because he was the whistleblower. Is it not good enough to give that guy, or doesn't he know about that incident? Shubedi Paul Modise in Bloemfontein. Thank you.
Good morning, Mrs. Cathy and SAFM listeners at large. As much as I'll be the first one to agree that SAPS a service, it's a little bit subpar, we also have to look at the fact that they are overworked. We basically need more police out there. Look, I personally have worked at SAPS 10-111 Gauteng. I can tell you the calls that those guys get, a good 30 to 40% of those calls are calls that don't even belong to SAPS. There's also a need for education for people to say when there's a need for ambulance, which number do you call as opposed to SAPS? Thanks.
All right. Those are just then some of the questions and reflections for you, Commissioner Sibiya. Let me give you a chance to respond before we take more.
Thank you, Cathy. I tried to capture some. You remind me, please, where I might have missed some. But safe to say that, starting with the gentleman from Rocklands, if there's somebody that was killed, I'm quite sure that the police are investigating the murder. And I don't know whether the person was killed as a result of the extortion, but because it may, if there's any information, positive information that you can give, I can give my numbers, and to an extent that you can also call me, and I'll make sure that this matter is followed up immediately. And in relation to, for an example, if I give you the call center that was actually established in Kabeja, if I give you the number of prank calls that we receive, instead of using it for what it's supposed to be or meant for, you will get mostly prank calls, and again you will also get many calls. I mean, in hundreds that says you just wanted to confirm the number or to check if the number is working. But at the ultimate end, you don't get people mainly reporting about genuine complaints where you can actually go and say, I'm following up. But we're still saying don't pay. You cannot choose to pay because you in fear of your life, and then later you come and say, but I paid because the police are useless. We are saying we want to assist you. You may call the police at a later stage because you paid, we will still investigate. But we are saying, please don't pay, because the moment you pay, you're making it to be a lucrative type of business. And why would they really go work, look for a job, instead of really making few threat calls, and then you get money? And then even when you come, you want to investigate, you are afraid to submit an affidavit. And in court, they say, all right, give us, you have to do an identification parade. Somebody must be pointed out, and at the same time, you are afraid you don't assist the police, and we lose the case. The police are useless. Let us work together with the community, make sure that we form a structure, a well-structured team, that integrated team that can actually deal with this thing robustly once and for all, in such a way that when we know the people that are involved in this type of phenomenon, we'll go make sure that we confront them. Where there are cases that we can tie them with, we'll make sure that we investigate thoroughly and we charge them. But if in the absence of any witness, the police are helpless and they will not be able to sustain any case before court.
All right. Alfred, you're in Mpumalanga. Good morning.
Cathy, morning.
Yes.
How's it, Cathy?
Alfred, we don't have time. Ask the commissioner whatever questions you have in mind.
Cathy, the question that is in mind is that I don't know to what extent are they knowing that this thing of extortion, it is happening also in certain municipalities. And politicians must not pretend like they don't know this thing. Because some of the politicians are them who are sending these people to some other municipalities, to an extent that to some other businesses. So, an intelligence, the police intelligence should be strengthened so that they investigate, Katie, what I'm saying now. You see,
what I'm saying, Alfred,
is
what are they doing in municipalities? What have you seen or heard?
No, Katie. Much as I was in structures of the ruling party, I know that thing has been happening. You see, they will extort municipalities. They will send some individuals to certain municipal officers with influence. You see, just to collect money. You see, and to some extent, the ruling parties at branch level, you cannot take out them from this matter. That is all what I'm saying, Katie.
Okay. All right, Alfred, thanks for that. We're getting a lot of messages as well around areas, Commissioner Sibiya, that people feel the police need to be investigating more when it comes to extortions. I mean, we've got a message here, Marion Hill, Pinetown. Let me just see what the rest of the message says, and Kwan being one of the areas. Let's listen to this voice note.
Cathy, I wish they would start by investigating all the police in Khayelitsha. We have 3 police stations, but people are so afraid to go and report because people are saying that the police are involved in this extorting. They're working with the gangs. I mean, they started with the Somalians and Ethiopians, and now they're doing it even to South Africans, whether you have an informal business or a formal one, but people are so afraid. I mean, we were happy when J.P. Smith was sort of getting involved, but also we realized that with all these police in Khayelitsha, you can't even track all of them, but they are involved.
Thank you, Cathy. Good morning. I'm just perturbed that we are talking about extortion cases and intelligence, but the officer that you have on board is talking about reported cases. Do we really work on the reported cases when we're talking about intelligence? Isn't intelligence supposed to uproot the problem before it even occurs? Thank you. I'll listen on the radio.
Commissioner?
Yes, the duty or the function of the intelligence is really to provide intelligence on the ground to the organized crime and to other relevant environment like the DPCI, according to their responsibilities. Theirs is to be on the ground, pick up information, report it, and support the investigative capacities. And it's what they are doing. And just yesterday, Cathy, at Sharpeville, we arrested a councillor of a particular political party with a member of the public. That shows you that we are well aware, including the corruption at the municipalities and the extortion that is taking place within the municipalities in relation to the tenders themselves. The pressure groups that we know that we have investigated, we know them all. And we have actually been investigating, and some of them have been charged. We are well aware, and people have been charged. That's all I can say is for now, in relation to our intelligence structures. They are hard at work. They are providing intelligence. And that is why even when you see, let's take for an example, the people that you see being attended to when the police are going to confront them because they know that they are going to commit crime and they start challenging the police. It's because the intelligence shall have provided intelligence on those individuals. Even yesterday, the ones that have been arrested, intelligence did provide evidence and they were arrested. So we are acting on these people on a daily basis, Katie.
Commissioner Sibiya, what is on your wish list? There was a listener who says, well, yes, we might criticize the police, but we must also be mindful of the challenges. If you had a wish list that you could give to the minister tomorrow, what would the 3 things that you would need? What are those 3 things that you would need to immediately improve the efficiency of crime fighting in the country?
Number 1, the community must rise up against this ugly phenomenon. They must rise up and say, we know these individuals, is the following people. And all of them, let us work with the police and other relevant stakeholders to make sure that we root this thing out of our community here and now immediately. You know what this person is, your brother, is involved in this thing, or is your next door neighbor. Let's rise up immediately to deal with this thing. Number 2, my wish list is that the working relations between the police and the NPA and other structures can be so tight in such a way that we've got one uniform approach in such a way that we will deal with this thing once and for all. But lastly, to deal with this situation that actually causes people to find themselves having to go out of their way and be so desperate in such a way that they end up now having to go to an old gogo somewhere and begin to demand money. A gogo at the street corner. Last time we were in Cape Town, an old lady who's actually selling meat on the street was actually killed simply because, and she did provide whatever they wanted, but nevertheless she was killed. So what we are saying is that we wish that our other stakeholders in terms of government, they must play their role in community awareness, our Department of Social Development also playing a role coming into the picture and making sure that at least we have enough on the ground that can actually assist the community and be able to talk to the community in such a way that the community begin to change their ways. That's my wish.
All right. Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibiya, the Deputy National Commissioner for Crime Detection. It's just after 11 o'clock, time for your latest news.
The top stories this hour: reasons given for the dismissal of Zuma's recusal application, and the pre-trial hearing against Mohlahlana's former PA is postponed. A very good morning to you. The Pietermaritzburg High Court says that one of the reasons it turned down former President Jacob Zuma's request to have advocate Billy Downer recused from the arms deal corruption trial was that there was no current private prosecution against Downer. The court was today providing reasons for its dismissal of Zuma's application to have Downer removed. Zuma had argued that Downer had to be removed as he had privately prosecuted Downer for bias. Judge Nkosinathi Cili says that all Zuma's attempts to have Downer removed had been unsuccessful. He says all the grounds advanced by the former president for the recusal of Downer had already been dealt with and dismissed by other courts. Clearly says that he could find no grounds for the argument that Zuma's right to a fair trial would be violated if Downer remains on the prosecution team. Zuma's defense lawyers had already indicated that they would appeal the ruling. The fraud and corruption pre-trial hearing against the former personal assistant to the then Free State Premier Ace Magashule has been postponed to October 16th. Murwadi Cholota briefly appeared before the Free State High Court in Bloemfontein. The postponement is due to her legal team needing more time to go through documents provided by the NPA. The 37-year-old has been charged with fraud, corruption and money laundering in a matter related to the controversial 2014 Free State Asbestos Eradication Project worth 255 million rand. Charlotta is currently out on bail. The Public Servants Association says although the enactment of the Employment Services Amendment Bill seems like a possible solution to address the number of foreign nationals employed in South Africa, it does not address the issue of a lack of skills in the country. This comes after the revelation that approximately 6,220 foreign nationals are employed in public service. The figure includes permanent residents and temporary employees. The association's Claude Nyker says the number clearly shows that there is a skills shortage in the country.
What we are actually doing is that we are having legislation to try and circumvent the problem that we have, where we reduce the number of foreign nationals in favor of our own people, which is not really addressing the problem, because we still have the problem where we do not have the necessary skill set, obviously, to compete. I think that's where we need to start, where we need to equip our people with the necessary knowledge, skills, qualifications, so that they can get not only preference, but if they do compete for the job, they are the best position for the job in any sector.
The National Sea Rescue Institute has confirmed that a body recovered on Saturday offshore of the Wilderness Beach near George is that of a 20-year-old man that went missing while swimming at Victoria Bay on the 31st of August. It says that a group of paddlers paddling from Victoria Bay to Sedgefield came across the body floating in the sea. The body of the 17-year-old boy that also went missing on that day was recovered last Tuesday at Victoria Bay. NSRI spokesperson Craig Lambinon has commended the paddlers for their assistance and shares his condolences with the families.
Care and compassion are with the families and friends in relation to the incident at Victoria Bay near to George on Saturday the 31st of August, where a local 20-year-old male and 17-year-old male went missing while swimming. We can confirm that on Saturday the 7th of September, the Southern Police Services, Water Policing and Diving Services recovered a body assisted by NSR Wilderness 1.5 kilometers offshore of Wilderness Beach. Positive identification has been performed, confirming the body to be that of the 20-year-old male.
The Jagersfontein mine tailings dam disaster has been brought back to life through a pictorial exhibition. The Pixels to Perspectives exhibition, as the showcase is known, is intended to show the aftermath of the disaster of the 11th of September 2022. The exhibition, curated by the University of the Free State, is a collection of images taken by residents immediately and days following the collapse of the tailings dam 2 years ago. Co-curator Dr. Annie Venter.
As idealistic as it sounds, I want to do good to society. And I believe in art. And I've got a skill, so why can I not utilize it? And this is how this whole exhibition has been born. I cannot do this with any other community if I don't have that experience of taking the photos a week after the disaster. I'm being haunted by that, and then listening for the interviews and being haunted by that. And now it's like, how do you do justice with the emotions you feel as an artist? And this is how this exhibition came to happen.
And to end, U.S. rapper Sean Diddy Combs has been ordered to pay $100 million to Michigan inmate Derek Lee Cardello Smith after he failed to appear for a virtual hearing. Cardello Smith sued Combs after accusing the hip-hop star of drugging him and sexually assaulting him at a party in 1997. Lawyers for Combs say he will fight the ruling. The top story this hour, the Pietermaritzburg High Court says one of the reasons it turned down former President Jacob Zuma's request to have advocate Billy Downer recused from the arms deal corruption trial was that there was no current private prosecution against Downer. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemeli.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Liverpool FC have collected maximum points in their opening 3 matches of the 2024-2025 season. They want more victories.
Look at the white shirts coming here. Salah! Salah scores at Old Trafford again.
Meanwhile, Forest want to dictate terms at Anfield.
All right, towards the back post. One with a free header. Yes! 1-0 Forest. Chris Wood scores.
This is the Premier League. Catch the spectacular clash between Liverpool FC and Nottingham Forest on Saturday, 14 September at 3:30 p.m. live on SABC3. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game. The students, UJ ladies, want to ensure that they secure 3 points to stay close to the heels of second-place UWC ladies. However, Copperbelt ladies plan to fasten their belts tight and escape from the bottom half. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch them Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. UJ Ladies FC versus Copperbelt Ladies FC on Saturday, 14 September at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Good morning, Cathy and SFM listeners. Cathy, Commissioner, I don't think he's respecting us as citizens. And he's saying he's well aware of this intelligence and these people that are working within SAPS and enabling this crime. But, well, how come whistleblowers are still being killed when they report these things? So the only plausible explanation from my side is that either they are not aware or they are aware and they are involved. So we can't have situations where citizens are reporting these misdemeanors, these crimes, and they're being gunned down, or they're afraid to be reported, and yet the commissioner and his intelligence is aware of these people. Why not expose these people in SAPS? Why not expose these corrupt officers and remove them? Why are people still fearing for their lives if the commissioner is aware? Yamgela from Cape Town.
Good morning, Sis Cathy. Lieutenant General Sibia is not being honest with the way he's approaching this whole situation with regards to how citizens could actually lodge complaints about how they're being treated by police, because we all know that the police themselves, with regards to these extortions, work on behalf of the extortion mafias, and they themselves execute civilians. They actually are murdering civilians out here within the country, and many have complained of such incidents, and civilians are even scared of the police in that regard. People are being killed by police. It mustn't act like people, the police can just be reported and then they'll be dealt with, they'll be arrested, or they'll be out of the SAPS. They must just be honest with the people. Daniel and Bryson.
Hi, this is Cathy. You see, the problem with this extortion thing, it's rooted in prison. You need to fix the prison system first, because that's where this thing comes from. If you could fix that, you could fix a lot of problems in society. Eradicate and get rid of the gangs in prison. You'll see the results out here.
My people, open your eyes and answer the call of the drum. Frelimo, Frelimo, Samora Machel, Samora Machel has come. Maputo, Maputo, home of the brave, our nation will soon be as one. Frelimo, Frelimo, Samora Machel, Samora Machel has won. And to those.
Well, is it still a luta continua for Mozambicans? We're heading to the polls. On the 9th of October this year, voters will cast ballots for the President, Parliament and regional authorities in that election. The current 69-year-old President Filipe Nyuso cannot stand for another term. The country, of course, has been led by the ruling Frelimo since independence. Today we look at the political dynamics at play in that election. What is the chance that the new players stand, and where is the opposition, Renamo in particular, this time around? Charles Kumalo is the former executive producer of the Portuguese desk at Channel Africa. He's also spent many years in Mozambique while in exile as a political activist. Charles, good morning to you, and thank you for making time for this conversation.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners as well.
Well, we know that this is a big election year, not only for countries around the world. Over 50% of the globe, is participating in elections this year. In Africa alone, we're going to have 19 elections by the time that we round up the year. Does that explain why one feels that the Mozambican election in particular has not really received much attention? And they're right down the road from us as South Africa.
Yes, my dear, it's quite true. Look, unfortunately, in countries like Mozambique, the playing field will never be equal. It's never level to all the political players in the country. Frelimo continues, of course, to have an upper hand above all the political parties that are participating in the election. Long before the campaigning started, President Filipe Nyusi was traveling across the country inaugurating some projects, water, electricity, and all that. I mean, to me, it actually says that the man has already scored some goals long before the campaign started. Hence, I'm saying that the political field is never level or equal to all the players.
Before we get into what exactly is at stake, let's perhaps get a sense of the issues and the challenges that are confronting Mozambique. Of course, when one thinks about the last 4 or 5 years, for South Africans, what has been most concerning around Mozambique has been really what appears to be a growth in insurgency there, in which conflict, of course, we have had to be involved in and have had to support Mozambique through the deployment of the Defence Force.
Oh, yes. Well, discovery of some resources on the African continent have been a curse to quite a number of African countries, Mozambique being one of them. Why this started suddenly after the discovery of oil, gas, and coal in the northern part of the country? Some of these things are actually not political, but economic. Hence, you can see that the people who are involved in this conflict are local people, but the whole thing is being inspired by foreign forces. Nobody knows actually what's happening in the Cabo Delgado province at the moment. But why is the conflict confined to that area and not to other provinces of the country or across the country? It actually explains that it's more of economic conflict than political. Nobody's fighting for power in Cabo Delgado. The battle is about the resources that have been discovered in that province.
What would you say are some of the bread and butter issues that Mozambicans are concerned about?
High level of unemployment among the youth, and it continues to rise. Well, of course, a poor health system, lack of excellent and good education that prepares the youth for their future careers. That is why you see a lot of Mozambican youth always cross the border into South Africa to come and live in the site. Whatever jobs they get the site, they are prepared to take it just to keep the wolves at bay, and of course to feed their families back in Mozambique. Well, high rate of crime, of course, you cannot rule it out. And the number of youth in that country that are involved, of course, in conflicts, they are being used. It's so easy, to manipulate hungry people, to embroil them in a conflict that they don't even know what is it all about. So it's easy to manipulate them because you can pay them. You can even brainwash them, like the situation in Cabo Delgado. You can be able to say to them, look, your province is very wealthy. It's got coal, it's got gas, it's got diamond, but you are not benefiting from these resources. They are being mined, they are being taken out of the country to go and, of course, enrich other countries overseas. People get enraged when they hear such things. Hence, of course, you have the situation like in Cabo Delgado. But look, Mozambique hasn't progressed that much since its independence from Portugal in 1975. It has gone through very, very tough times. It's a country that is regularly hit by natural disasters, cyclones, floods, of course, in the central part of the country. Despite the fact that it's a country that is very, very wealthy, wonderful soil, of course. It's fertile from south to north, from east to west, but they are still unable to produce all the required or necessary agricultural products across the country because of natural disasters.
The issue of natural disasters, of course, has become one that is really creating problems for Mozambique. We have seen, an increase in inclement weather events that have very severely affected the country. And when one looks at what happens post the floods, the state and the pace of recovery is also quite long. And you still have many families today that haven't recovered from Cyclone Adai, which took place now a number of years ago. So how much of that is actually translating into people's thinking around their politics? Or is it a case of going into this election but being pretty sure of what the outcome of this election might be?
When I listen to campaigners saying, to canvass support for their respective political parties, they are using, of course, these natural disasters, as a trump card. Because most of them, when they talk to the electorates out there, they say to people, look, your area has been hit by disasters. The government hasn't responded until today. We are without roofs above your heads, no roads, no schools, and so on. If you vote for us, we assure you, you'll be having a school within a very short space of time. We are going to tar the road. We are going to build a clinic. We are going to build this and that and that. So they are actually toying around with people's emotions. They are all saying the very same thing, that we will bring to you good services, water, electricity, places of tuition. They are actually not talking about developments which the country could not even achieve in its 49 years of independence.
We have to, of course, talk about the climate and the space for democracy in a country like Mozambique. So earlier you started off by saying that there is no equal playing field when it comes to elections in Mozambique. Is there an open political space? Can we say that that country hosts competitive elections?
Looking at the current situation, I think the elections next month will be one of the best, of course, in the history of that country. The political space, well, yes, it's polite. There is, of course, the atmosphere of democracy. People are campaigning freely. But unfortunately, having covered elections across the African continent, I have noted that, all ruling parties have unfair advantage above political parties because they have all the state resources at their disposal. I mean, the media or national broadcasters, they give spaces to all political parties. But look, when it comes to the president of the country, he always gets the biggest share of coverage. He'll be talking pains. That is why I'm saying that, the state always has that unfair advantage above all the political parties. But if you talk about, a peaceful atmosphere, yes, indeed, I say openly that the environment, of course, is conducive for free and fair elections. What's important will be who are going to monitor those elections. And, of course, look, if you ask me who's going to be the winner, to me there is no doubt Frelimo will retain power overwhelmingly. Because when I look at the public rallies that they conduct, Frelimo still continues to attract thousands and thousands of people to their public rallies. And then, of course, you look at the second largest political party, which is Renamo. It does attract, of course, a sizable number of people, but look, the difference is very vast. And then, of course, there is a third largest political party. It's called MDM, Mozambique Democratic Movement. is also, gaining momentum. It's also a force to be reckoned with. And we have about 4 political parties that are campaigning for national or for the presidential elections out of 36 political parties. And they're all vying for 17 million electorate, eligible voters.
I'm interested in your statement around free and fair elections and the fact that you believe that in fact these elections will be free and fair. The armed conflict location and event data reported that the municipal elections held in 2023 in Mozambique saw the highest number of reported incidents of election violence since they began collecting this data, because you've got violent extremism, but you also have political apathy in the country.
Yes, the northern part of the country is sparsely populated, largely rural, especially areas like Cabo Delgado province. The largest population of Mozambique is concentrating from the center, like Nampula province, to the south, That's where the largest number is, and of course the largest number of eligible voters will emanate. Well, look, we'll always have those skirmishes. Regardless of the situation, you always have those malcontents, people want to spoil this and that. I cannot assure you that things will be 100% perfect on the ground. But from what I see, because I follow the campaigns on a daily basis on my national television station here, I do get Mozambique International. I can follow it very closely, and I can rest assure you that they will be peaceful. People actually campaign freely. My only point is that who will be there as foreign observers to come and make sure that elections will be free and fair. But as for the issue of the terrain, I've indicated earlier on that, look, the playing field will never be level to everybody. The state or any political party that campaigns, it always has, state resources at its disposal, unfair state resources at its disposal. And Frelimo continues, of course, to enjoy those opportunities. It's not different from other parties around the African continent.
One also has to think about the interests of the region, right, in that election. And what we have seen, perhaps even with a country like South Africa, and including the governing party, yes, governing under Government of National Unity, the ANC, is that they've now gone on to strengthen ties with some of the liberation parties within the region. Do you expect that to continue?
Yes, it will continue. But the most unfortunate thing about liberation movement of yesteryear is that it's high time now, they outgrow their liberation credentials and become, modern political parties. Because the youth of today are not interested about the armed struggle. They were not there, most of them. All that they want is a decent living, education, jobs, They want to see a thriving country. If the country is producing a lot of resources, they want to see those resources, filter into the economy of the country, flourishing economies. The problem with the liberation movement to the African continent is that they want to continue to instill that information in the head of everybody, even, the born frees, who were born long after independence. And those people are not interested in that anymore. All that they want is good governance and, of course, flourishing economies so that they can be able to get jobs, they can be able to involve themselves in, small-scale businesses, decent living. I mean, look at the situation right now if you look at the countries around the region here. Most of the youth from Zimbabwe, Mozambique, Lesotho, Malawi, Zambia, they all come to South Africa for greener pastures. Some of them are well-educated people, but they ended up doing, manual jobs here in South Africa. Others working on farms.
All right. Charles, apologies. Sorry for interjecting there.
Hey, Ntwana, if I could, I'd fly to Dubai.
Here we go again.
First class, Exeni. Get myself a V12 Beast and a mansion with Instagram-worthy views.
You don't even have Instagram.
Imagine seeing the city skyline from my bedroom, watching MasterChef SA while I have my very own MasterChef in my kitchen. Forget the queues at the cinema. I'd have one in my crib, Joe. I'm talking 7.1 surround sound and a 120-inch 8K TV whilst I'm sipping on some grapes. I'm talking luxury, Ntwana. What do you know about that? Let me school you, bro. Tune into Dubai, Buying the Dream, Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. on S3, and channel your inner luxury. Only on S3. Open up.
EFC is live this Thursday. The bantamweight title is on the line, live from the World Sports Betting Arena, as the top-ranked divisional contenders and perennial fan favorites Faiz Jacobs and Vince Bembe go to war.
Oh, big right for Faiz Jacobs. The finish is over. What a win.
When he smells blood, he hunts mercilessly for the finish.
EFC is live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
A very good morning to you with the news headlines at 11:30. The DA has threatened to walk out of the Government of National Unity should President Cyril Ramaphosa go ahead and sign the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill into law. The High Court in Pietermaritzburg has given reasons on why it turned down former President Jacob Zuma's request to have Advocate Billy Downer recused from the arms deal corruption trial. And health workers in the occupied West Bank say at least 5 Palestinians have been killed in an Israeli drone strike. And those are your headlines. A full news update at midday.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
You're listening to The Talking Point. We continue the conversation this morning, unpacking the politics in Mozambique ahead of the elections on the 9th of October later this year. Charles Kumalo is a former executive producer of the Portuguese desk at Channel Africa. He's also spent many years in Mozambique while in exile as a political activist. So apologies, Charles, there. We got a bit cut off. I was engrossed in the conversation and I forgot about the news headlines. And I think that, we were speaking, of course, about the elections in Mozambique, and you're reflecting on the links between the liberation movements and what that means for the ANC Frelimo dynamic. And of course, that will play out even into governance, how the South African government then also deals and responds to what is unfolding in Mozambique. Can we talk a little bit about South Africa's interests in Mozambique, because we do seem to have some interests at play there, including in the Cabo Delgado region?
Labour is bound, of course, to have either negative or positive impact on South Africa and South Africa's security. And of course, remember, South Africa continues to be the big brother here in the region. Definitely, it will not stand idle by when, of course, Mozambique is going through crisis, especially the situation in the Cabo Delgado province. And of course, the labor, Mozambique, like other countries around South Africa here, Lesotho, Swaziland, continue to be labor reservoir as far as South Africa is concerned. Manual laborers and, of course, miners. We know these people have contributed tremendously, in building the South African economy. For many years, of course, Mozambicans have always been working in South African mines. They still have a lot of them today, still. And one other thing we must always take into consideration is that South Africa will never, ever be stable if any of its neighbors is unstable. We will always have skirmishes, beyond the borders of neighboring countries spilling into South Africa. The security situation in Cabo Delgado, for example, it has actually indicated that if South Africa can just stand idle by, look at the situation unfolding, I mean, the conflict could easily spill into other parts of the region. South Africa, of course, will not be immune from this situation. And of course, economically, South Africa still, linked to Mozambique when it comes to the economy. Mozambique still linked to South Africa when it comes to the economy. We do use, of course, Mozambique's harbor as well. They use ours as well. The economies of the two countries may not be that, powerful, but look, as a neighbor, we do need each other for prosperity. Because if we can allow the situation in Mozambique to get completely out of control, this will have a negative impact on the economy of South Africa. We have seen what happened in Zimbabwe when the issue of land redistribution started. Zimbabweans started crossing into South Africa in their thousands. And of course, the labor market in South Africa has suffered tremendously, especially South Africans, because Zimbabweans came in, as cheap labor to come and take a lot of jobs from South Africans. And of course, some of them were not employed, but they did things that were unlawful in the country. We expect, of course, to see things like, criminality being on the increase at the same time, because those who come in and say we're looking for jobs in South Africa, should they not get those jobs, what's going to happen? They have to eat, they need accommodation, they need clothing. In the end, they'll end up getting all those things or obtaining all those things that they so much need in an unlawful way.
Okay.
By that, I mean criminality.
I'm going to bring in some of the reflections and contributions of our listeners to this conversation.
Hi, Cathy, and your guest. Let me just bring my 2 cents into this. The issue with Cabo Delgado is more geopolitical than economic. Because when the minerals were discovered in Cabo Delgado, they sidelined people from Cabo Delgado. They went all the way to Maputo to fetch people there and brought mining companies without consulting the people from Cabo Delgado. This is how this war started. And as a former security operative, I spent almost a year there. There are people that are sitting there just hanging around doing absolutely nothing. The same thing that is happening in DRC, it's happening in Mozambique. They are doing zelts. They sit there the whole day. They only respond after people have been killed. Yeah, anonymous, yeah.
Hi, good morning, Cathy. How are you, Mafuta here, Cathy? I don't see Frelimo being dislodged from power by Renamo. Renamo is still the biggest party, but there are other smaller parties in Mozambique, Cathy, which dislodged Renamo from being a powerful opposition. But I would like your guest, Cathy, there to discuss whether there is any possibility of any new president in Mozambique to instill order in Cabo Delgado, Cathy. That conflict is worrisome for me and has been prolonged for so long. And what would it take to bring peace in that region, Cathy, which is likely to derail the entire region's peace, in other words, Cathy?
All right, thanks for those contributions and questions. Charles?
Yes, my dear. Well, of course, we are expecting a new president, but he's not going to come from a new party. He'll come from the very same party that has been governing Mozambique since 1975. That's Frelimo. We know right now the presidential candidate, it's a young man with the name of Daniel Francisco Chapo. He was born 2 years after Mozambique's independence. You can see how young he is. Well-educated, vivacious. In his campaigns, he's focusing on the youth mainly. He talks about development, education, good health system, all the things that can make, a country a prosperous and a happy country. But what's important is, if he comes into the office, if he occupies the highest office in the land, is he going to be his own man, or is he going to be a yes man? This is what you want to know. He can have good ideas, comes with good plans, but is he going to be given his space, allowed his space to operate freely as the president of the country? That's the most important thing that we have to look into now. Because when I talk to my peers in Mozambique, they do agree, saying, no, he's the right person, he's a young man, well educated, he's got good plans, but we wonder if he'll be allowed his space to implement all those projects he's talking about. Well, the issue of Cabo Delgado as well. It's for him to go to Cabo Delgado and meet the people on the ground and find out what the problem is. Because, peace cannot be peace cannot be imported and cannot be enforced. Peace and security, they have to be implemented willingly by the people on the ground.
Sure,
if
go
indeed,
ahead.
I was saying that if the issue is jobs in Cabo Delgado, there is something that can be sorted out within a short space of time by the Mozambicans themselves, not by the Rwandans with their weapons. Definitely not.
Chapo's announcement as the presidential candidate did come as a surprise to many because he, of course, has not participated in politics at the national level in terms of being part of, the national cabinet. Does that add to your concerns around him being his own man, briefly?
Yes, it does. It does, definitely. It does. But of course, I understand that his credentials explain that the man was doing pretty well when he was working in his hometown, the province of, I'm quite sure it's Sofala province. I do not know, of course, how much he can deliver when it comes to national politics. But I guess the man has been fine-tuned, and if he's not fine-tuned, then it will be a disaster.
All right.
But now it also comes to the point where I say, is he going to be allowed his space to operate freely as the president of the country, or is he going to be a yes man? That's the most important thing now. And this is exactly what worries a lot of Mozambican people, because one other thing is that Mozambique, has always been governed by people with liberation war credentials, except the current president, Felipe Nyusi. The rest have always been military people. Chapo is not a military person.
All right.
Is he going to be treated like a veteran as well? We don't know. It's a wait-and-see situation.
Charles, we're going to have to leave it there for this morning. Charles Khumalo, former executive producer of the Portuguese desk at Channel Africa, and of course, political activist who spent many years in exile in Mozambique. That's where we leave the conversation on the talking point for today. We're back again tomorrow between 9 and midday. Up next, the book reading.
Unlock a world of benefits. Welcome to SABC's TV License Rewards program. Ready to make your viewing experience more rewarding? Say hello to perks that go beyond just watching TV. Join us today at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and instantly receive your first reward. But wait, there's more. You can get up to 500 Rand back. Become part of something bigger, a movement where watching TV isn't just a hobby. It's a catalyst for positive change. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and open the door to a world of benefits. Plus, every time you tune in, you're making a difference. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments. They make a difference. The varsity derby between Amatak's ladies and UWC ladies will display who are the brighter students. UWC target the top spot, while Amatak's want to break into the top 3. This is the Hollywood Best Super League. Catch Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. University of Pretoria Ladies FC versus University of the Western Cape Ladies FC on Sunday 15 September at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Hey, you know, Ntwana, if I could, I'd fly to Dubai.
Here we go again.
First class, Exeni. Ngithi shwe. Get myself a V12 Beast and a mansion with Instagram-worthy views.
You don't even have Instagram.
Imagine seeing the city skyline from my bedroom, watching MasterChef SA while I have my very own MasterChef in my kitchen. Forget the queues at the cinema. I'd have one in my crib, Joe. I'm talking 7.1 surround sound and a 120-inch 8K TV whilst I'm sipping on some grapes. I'm talking luxury, Ntwana. What do you know about that? Let me school you, bro. Tune into Dubai, Buying the Dream. Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. on S3. And channel your inner luxury. Only on S3. Open up.
The breakers of the barriers have demonstrated that bravery, courage, and excellence often exceed any boundaries and limits. This exhilarating moment is the 19th edition to celebrate and honor the tangible impact of women in sport. Experience the Momentum G-Sport Awards 2024 on Thursday, 12 September at 6:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and reports on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of A Life of Purpose, written by Luvuyo Wachela and Lumkile Wiseman Kuhlu. The reader is Lerato Velase.
He was even more determined when, during the first week, he found out that some of those who had testified against him in 1963 were about to graduate. Seeing them and thinking of what they had done infuriated him, but he could not allow rage to get in his way, especially since he was well aware that a younger age group had by now caught up with him, and he needed to move along.
Wherever I went, there were younger guys and women, probably doing their second year. They were all younger than me. Some of those who were my age group were either doing their third years or honors degrees.
This encouraged Wiseman even more. He had a point to prove, that he was as good, if not better, than them. He had experienced, survived, and learned from hardship. Turning anger and energy from political activity to academic achievement, 1967 to 1970. Fort Hare University, across the Tume River from Lovedale, still had revered reputation. Even in the segregated and repressive apartheid state, Fort Hare had become a bastion of African intellectualism, drawing on the educational credo of the mission schools and fostering the emergence of a new literate intelligentsia, which became one of the key components of early African nationalism and militancy in the Eastern Cape. The university was, however, still contaminated by the government policy of segregation. Phyllis Ntantala, who traveled with her husband, A.C. Jordan, to Alice in the mid-1940s, was alarmed by instances of discrimination against African staff, who she defined as timid and lost. Yet it is incontrovertible that Fort Hare had contributed to galvanizing mission education as it grew to a prominent cross-cultural academic institution by the mid-20th century. By the 1950s, it was producing dynamic curricula in its long-established field of humanities and had also begun to introduce the natural sciences, linking qualifications initially with Rhodes University and the University of South Africa, UNISA. Fort Hare had become the breeding ground of a long list of intellectuals and leaders throughout South Africa and the African continent. The apartheid government's attack on integrated higher education, consolidated by the 1959 extension of University Education Act, altered the path. The liberation historian John Pampalis has stressed that the causal principle of the 1959 Act was to enforce not only racial but also ethnic separation in the tertiary institutions. The 1959 Act was immediately extended to the University College of Fort Hare. Amid protests which triggered dismissals and resignations, the government had quickly moved to co-sign Fort Hare to the Department of Bantu Education. Daniel Messi, who wrote an incisive account of the 1959 Act's impact on the ensuing protest, equates the application of that legislation on Fort Hare as the end of this university as a free institution. The far-reaching changes that marked the sluicing of the Hitheto liberal academic and administrative staff had by 1962 culminated in the appointment of personnel who had been trained and had worked largely in Afrikaans medium universities. Curricula were realigned to complement Bantu education and the apartheid strategy. The long affiliation of Fort Hare to the Liberal National Union of South African Students, NUSAS, was rescinded and students could only organize themselves under a feeble Student Representative Council, SRC. Behind such sweeping changes was J.J. Ross, who arrived as the new rector in 1960. Messi described him as an administrator and an educator who revealed a keen interest in the advance of the apartheid government's policy. Under his administration, security police were ubiquitous, political activity was repressed, and Fort Hare was rapidly reduced to a typical Bantustan institution. Yet, despite the mounting presence of the security police, the calamity of Sharpeville, and the banning of African political organizations, subversive political activity simmered within and around this institution. Coinciding with Ross's arrival from mid-1960 to 1963, individual students and academic became part of secretive operations, mainly to expand secret cells and the teachings of the liberal movements. These were mostly the activities of the ANC and the PAC and were well known to Wiseman from his early studies at Lovedale. Dynamic Fort Hare individuals such as Andrew Masondo and Ngabande Sidzamba had interacted with him directly during that time. Underground political activity and the counter-curriculum, which some Fort Hare academics offered clandestinely, still attracted many young Africans to that institution. But as the clampdown descended on the liberal movement in 1963, particularly after the Rivonia trial, political activism at Fort Hare came to an end. Ross's administration continued to purge remnants of the liberal movement, and during the mid to late 1960s, police presence and harassment had become the major cause of anxiety on the Fort Hare campus. In 1967, as Wiseman was admitted, ironically without delving into his prior political activism and imprisonment, there were about 20 student protesters against the persistent police presence who were denied readmission. Because of his Methodist affiliation, Wiseman was placed at the Wesleyan Hall, which was to be his new home for the next 4 years. Conscious of his political past, especially his Lovedale experience, he did not engage much in political activity, but focused on his studies. In the mid-year examination of 1967, he gained impressive grades in accounting and statistics and was noticed by the heads of the departments of accounting and economics, who both felt that Wiseman was wasting his time in continuing to study for the diploma in commerce and urged him to register for the Bachelor of Commerce degree at the start of 1968. In those days, there were no shortcuts to upgrading credentials, and in his case, he still had to complete the preliminary year of the diploma he had registered for in 1967. His 1967 achievements could not be used as credits for the first year of his BCom studies. In any case, by now he had been awarded 2 scholarships because of his high performance at the end of 1967, which covered tuition and lodging fees for his degree. Having confronted adversity for much of his young life, he had learned to be patient. Even so, he was still conscious of fleeting time, and thus was concerned, albeit not overly disconcerted, when he was informed that he had to do again some of the subjects he had already passed in 1967. Wiseman's beginning the BCom program in 1968 coincided with the arrival of a new rector, Johannes Martinus de Wet. A staunchly conservative Afrikaner, he received a hostile reception from the Fort Hare student body. His administration was tested from the outset when an undertaking by Steve Biko, then a University of Natal medical student, and a group of the University Christian Movement, UCM, presented a petition about Fort Hare's social grievances. Biko had at the time also established a close relationship with Father Elred Stubbs of the Federal Theological Seminary of Southern Africa, FEDSEM, that by the late 1960s had an establishment at Fort Hare. Moreover, Biko was originally from the nearby King Williamstown and thus had also built himself a following at Fort Hare. De Wet immediately saw a threat, and in an attempt to foil the petition, he foreclosed on the interaction of Fort Hare students with the UCM. That move rendered him persona non grata with the students, and the second half of 1968 was punctuated by incidents and student boycotts, especially of his installation, arrests, and evictions. The turbulent year 1968 culminated in September in a brief closure of campus and under the shadow of interrogations and expulsion of those deemed ringleaders. Classes reconvened under a rigorous new set of rules. These occurrences gave Wiseman a sense of déjà vu. Having suffered after being sold out in a similar manner at Lovedale some 5 years earlier, he made a conscious effort this time to maintain a low profile and concentrate on his studies. But he was never reticent about sharing his true background and political beliefs. He was always close to his family members. Between 1967 and 1970, he stayed in contact with his older cousin, Thembekile Nkuhlu, with whom he shared his English name, Wiseman. Thembekile came from the poor community of Mbulukweza, but was an influence on Wiseman as he was one of the few family and community members who had attained matric. While Wiseman was still at school, Thembekile had started working in Port Elizabeth, where he, his wife Lulama, and 3 young sons, Mveleli, Mxoleli, and Mfundo, subsequently went to live. Wiseman often visited them in Port Elizabeth. In turn, Thembekile was proud of his young cousin's outstanding performance at Fort Hare and adopted Wiseman as a symbol of inspiration for his young sons. Wiseman also regularly visited his uncle, Wycliffe Nkuhlu, who worked for Radio Bantu as a radio announcer, umsasazi, and was very popular with the public.
That was another episode of A Life of Purpose, second